to sleep through history. Tonight, we're exploring the quiet, everyday rhythms of medieval life, the kind of history that won't keep you awake. Before you drift off, I'm curious, where are you listening from tonight? Comment your country or city. Over the next 2 hours, we'll move gently through a peasant's simple daily routine. The cold stone chambers of castle life, and the small, unremarkable details that filled medieval days and nights. No battles, no drama, just the slow, steady pace of life in the Middle Ages. So settle in. Let your breathing soften. Let your eyes grow heavy. And let's begin with dawn breaking very slowly over a small medieval peasant village. Dawn routines. The first hint of morning in a medieval village wasn't a sudden brightness. There were no glowing screens, no lamps, no clock faces announcing the time. It was subtle, a softening of darkness, a faint, cool gray stretching across the sky, so gentle that most people didn't notice it at first. Inside a small timber and thatch cottage, a peasant family began to stir. They didn't wake all at once. Sleep faded slowly, like mist lifting from a field. In these simple homes, the entire family often slept in one room. Space was precious. Warmth was even more precious. Straw mattresses lay across the floor or on low wooden frames. The straw wasn't plush or soft, just dry, crinkling stalks packed together. Over time, the straw compacted and flattened, needing to be replaced again and again. But for now, it was good enough. Good enough to sleep on. Good enough to rest tired bodies after long days in the fields. Blankets were shared. Thick wool, scratchy but warm. Children curled beside their parents to stay close to warmth, everyone breathing the same cold morning air. There was no alarm clock. Instead, a rooster crowed outside, sounding the same way it did yesterday, and the day before, and every day before that. A church bell might ring in the distance, slow and heavy, calling the village to morning prayers. But even without the sound, the household knew morning had arrived. And so the day began. The fire in the hearth had burned low overnight, not out completely. Coals were banked under ash to keep a small ember alive. This ember was the key to the entire morning, to warmth, to cook, to everything that made the house a home. Someone, often the eldest member of the family, would kneel beside the hearth, brushing away the layer of ash. A faint red glow appeared, barely visible, but enough. A small piece of dry kindling was placed carefully beside the ember. Then another, then another. A gentle breath, another soft breath, coaxing the ember to warm the wood. A curl of smoke, a faint spark, a tiny flame. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the fire fire returned to life. This happened every single morning. The same motions, the same care, the same slow patience. Once the fire was strong enough, the first meal of the day could begin. Nothing elaborate, just yesterday's bread, slightly stale, but still edible. Weak ale, safer to drink than water. Perhaps a simple porridge stirred slowly in a pot, suspended above the growing flame. This meal wasn't meant to excite, just to sustain. A quiet start to a long day ahead. Outside, the sky lightened further, very slowly, as it did every morning. The same routine begins again, as it was yesterday, and will begin tomorrow, morning farm work. With the first meal finished, it was time to walk to the fields. The path never changed, packed earth, rutted with use, a mix of dried mud and patches of grass stubbornly clinging to life. Each footfall landed where countless others had landed before. The villagers walked this same route every day, season after season, year after year. The fields were waiting just as they had yesterday, just as they would tomorrow. If it was spring, plowing began early. The oxen, patient and slow, were brought from their enclosure. Their harnesses were checked carefully. Leather straps tightened, wooden yokes adjusted. Nothing rushed, nothing hurried. Every motion is deliberate, practiced, familiar. The plow itself was simple, wooden frame, iron-tipped blade. It didn't cut through the soil quickly. It urged the earth apart, slowly, steadily, one furrow at a time. A villager would take their place behind the plow, hands gripping the handles worn smooth by generations. The ox leaned forward. The plow gratefully followed. The first furrow was carved, straight enough, deep enough, good enough. Then came the turn. A slow, wide arc across the field, back to the start, and forward again. Forward, then back, then forward again. Hour after hour, row after row. The same steady rhythm. If seeds needed sowing, that too followed a quiet pattern. A handful of seeds, a step forward, a bend at the waist. Drop the seeds gently, cover them with soil, then again, and again, and again. Bend, drop, cover, step. A soft repetition that filled the morning. If it was summer, weeds would be removed slowly, one by one. Each pulled from the earth with a quiet tug. The sun climbed higher, warming the fields gradually. The oxen moved at their usual pace, steady and patient. The villagers' steps matched theirs, falling into the same rhythm shared by countless farmers across generations. Hour after hour, the plow moved forward, then back, then forward again, the same motion, over and over, as it had for generations. Midday meal and rest. By midday, the sun stood high above the fields, not harsh, not intense, just steady and unchanging. The villager paused beneath a small tree, its shade offering a small relief from the day's slow labor. Bread, cheese, onions, a sip of weak ale, eaten slowly, chewed thoroughly, not savored exactly, but accepted as part of the day's rhythm. A brief rest, a quiet moment, a chance to breathe before returning to the fields. The breeze drifted across the grass. A few birds circled overhead. Clouds drifted lazily, barely moving. But rest couldn't last long. There was always more work, the same work, waiting in the fields. Midday meal and rest. By midday, the sun reached its highest point in the sky. Not sharply overhead, but softly shining down on the fields, warming the earth, warming the oxen, warming the peasant, who now finally paused from hours of slow, repetitive work. The villager found a familiar spot beneath a small tree, a tree that had given shade to the family yesterday, and the day before, and many days before that. The ground beneath the tree was worn smooth from countless midday breaks. The grass, thin from being sat on so many times, still offered a bit of softness. From a small cloth bundle, the midday meal was unwrapped. It was simple, always simple. A piece of coarse bread, a small wedge of cheese, slightly tangy and firm. An onion sharp at first bite, but filling. A wooden cup with a little weak ale, mild and watered down, but safe to drink. Each bite was slow, not rushed, chewed carefully, not because of leisure, but because this food needed to stretch through a long afternoon. The bread was tough. Its crust is thick from being baked days ago. But the familiar hardness was comforting in its own way. Predictable, dependable, much like the rest of the day. The villager leaned back against the tree trunk, feeling the rough bark press gently into tired muscles. The breeze drifted softly across the fields. Birds called lazily in the distance. Clouds moved very slowly across the sky, their shadows crossing the earth like drifting blankets. Eyes grew heavy, but not enough to sleep. There was still work to do. Always more work. Just a moment. A quiet moment to breathe, to sit still, to feel the weight of the morning soften just a little. But rest couldn't last long. There was always more work, the same work, waiting in the fields as it did every day. Afternoon work. The villager rose again, steadily, slowly, the way someone does after hours of labor. The oxen, too, shifted their weight, as if bracing for another set of identical motions. Back into the fields, back to the plow, back to the same furrows that stretched in long, familiar rows. The work resumed exactly where it left off. Hands took hold of the plow handles, their wooden surfaces smooth from generations of grip. The ox leaned forward, its muscles moved steadily, without urgency, as though it understood this rhythm as well as any human did. Forward they went, the blade carved into the soil, turning the earth in a slow, curling wave. Step, pull, the same sound, the same motion, the same cycle. The villager's back ached faintly, not painfully, just a steady, familiar tiredness. Legs felt heavy, hands rough and calloused from years of guiding tools. But none of it was new, none of it surprising. It was simply life. Life as it always was. Sometimes another villager passed by, offering a brief nod, perhaps a short remark about the weather, a topic that changed often, but conversations that did not. Well enough, someone might say, dry today. Maybe it will rain tomorrow. Then the silence returned. Only the steady grind of the plow and the faint rustling of wind over crops. The sun drifted downward very slowly, beginning its long descent, and still the same motions continued, again and again, day after day, season after season. As shadows grew longer, very gradually, the day's work finally, slowly, came to an end. Evening routines, with the last furrow completed and the oxen unharnessed and led back to their enclosure, the villager began the familiar walk home. The same path as morning, the same patches of mud, the same stones half buried in the earth, each step placed where countless steps had been placed before. The village came into view, small cottages clustered together, their thatched roofs tinted gold by the setting sun. Inside the home, the fire in the hearth was still glowing, kept alive through the day by banked coals. Now, the fire would grow again, slowly, to prepare the evening meal. A pot was brought forward, a simple iron pot, blackened from years of hanging above flames. Water was added. Then vegetables, turnips, onions, cabbage, beans, whatever was available, whatever had been grown, whatever remained from previous meals. This mixture was pottage, the same food eaten almost every evening. Its scent was familiar, its flavor reliable, its ingredients slightly different each day, but always recognizably the same. The pot hung above the fire. Bubbles formed slowly. The stew simmered gently. Every few minutes, someone stirred it, a slow, circular motion, then stepped away, then returned, stirred again, waited, stirred again. The repetition was soothing, predictable, as comforting as the food itself. When the pottage was ready, the family gathered at the same table as always. The same wooden bowls, the same spoons, the same soft conversation, if any at all. After the meal, Evening chores began. Animals needed feeding, grain for chickens, scraps for pigs, hay for goats or cows. Tools needed mending, a loose handle tightened, a crack in wood repaired, a rope rewoven. Inside, wool was spun, the spindle turning slowly, thread forming steadily, building toward future cloth. As night settled in, the fire was banked once more, coals covered carefully with ash to preserve their warmth until morning. The straw bedding was shaken out, blankets arranged. Children settled first, then adults. A short prayer was spoken, a gentle ritual marking the end of another long, quiet, ordinary day. Darkness fell across the village. Candles were too precious to burn. The only light came from the faint glow of hearths and the moon rising slowly in the sky. While peasants settled into their straw beds, in the darkness of their simple cottages, life in the castle above followed its own slow, quiet rhythm. Sleeping chambers, heating methods, daily routines. High above the quiet village, on a low hill or rocky rise, the castle stood as it had for generations. Thick stone walls, tall towers, narrow windows, all watching over the land around them. And inside those walls, as night settled in, the castle residents prepared for sleep in their own quiet way. Castle sleep was not as warm or comfortable as many imagine. The stone chambers were cold, always cold, even in summer. Even when the days were warm and bright, the nights inside the castle felt chilled. Stone held the cold. It absorbed it, kept it, returned it slowly to the air, so the chambers always felt just a little icy, especially near dawn. In the Lord's great chamber, a large bed stood against one wall. It was more elaborate than the beds of the peasants. A wooden frame carved with simple patterns, rope supports stretched tightly beneath, a straw mattress resting on top, with a softer feather mattress layered above it if the family was wealthy enough. Curtains surrounded the bed, thick wool or heavy linen, not for decoration, but to trap warmth inside and keep out drafts that slipped through the smallest cracks in stone. Someone might draw those curtains slowly, letting them fall one by one, creating a small cocoon of warmth within the vast, cool chamber. Beneath the blankets, the bed felt slightly warmer, but not by much. Blankets were thick wool, heavy and rough, layered one on top of the other. Their weight was comforting, pressing gently against the sleeper. The lord and lady shared this bed, but servants slept elsewhere, many on simple pallets laid across the chamber floor. Still others slept in side rooms, hallways, or near the kitchen fires, where it was just a bit warmer. A servant sleeping near a hearth might feel the faint glow of heat, but also hear the constant crackle of embers and the soft, rhythmic breathing of others nearby. Throughout the castle, sleeping places were scattered, not organized like rooms in modern buildings, but tucked into corners, placed wherever space existed. At night, the castle sounded different than during the day. The echo of footsteps quieted, conversations faded, but new sounds took their place. Wind stirred through narrow arrow slits, a long, low whistle, soft and steady. Dogs barked faintly in the distance, guarding the outer courtyards. A guard walked along the ramparts, each step steady and predictable, the sound repeating over and over like a gentle heartbeat of the sleeping castle. Inside the sleeping chambers, the darkness was deep. Stone walls absorbed the daylight quickly, and with only a small window slit high on the wall, almost no moonlight entered. The faintest flicker from a dying heart, the outline of bed curtains, the soft rise and fall of blankets, and not much else, as castle inhabitants tried to sleep, wrapped in their heavy wool covers, listening to the low song of wind through stone. The castle itself never truly slept. There were always tasks, always routines, continuing through the night and into the next day. Castle heating methods. Heating a castle was never easy. The thick stone walls that protected the inhabitants also made the rooms cold and damp. Fireplaces were large, built directly into the stone, their openings wide enough for several logs at once. But despite their size, they were not efficient. Much of the heat rushed upward, drawn quickly into the chimney and released into the air above the castle. Only a little warmth spilled into the room, and it faded quickly if one stepped even a few paces away. Sometimes metal braziers were used, simple round containers of iron or bronze filled with glowing coals. These could be carried from room to room as needed. They didn't warm large spaces, but placed near a bed or chair, they offered a small circle of comfort. The castle floors were covered in rushes, long, dried plants laid across the stone to provide some insulation. The rushes softened footsteps, and when replaced regularly, helped absorb the dampness that always lingered in castle air. Against the walls, heavy tapestries hung in long folds. To modern eyes, they seemed decorative, scenes of hunts, religious images, patterns of leaves and vines. But their primary purpose was practical: to block drafts and slow the movement of cold air seeping through the stone. In the wealthier chambers, the bed curtains formed a small private world, a chamber within a chamber. Drawn tightly, they held warmth from body heat in a way the rest of the room could not. Even so, people slept in layers, multiple tunics, woolen socks, sometimes even hats. The cold was persistent, unchanging, part of everyday life inside the castle. Despite all these methods, the castle remained cold. It's always cold, and life continued slowly in the chill. Daily castle routines. Morning in the castle began early, even earlier for the servants, who woke long before the sun to prepare the chambers for the day ahead. The first task was always the same: rekindling the fires. Throughout the castle, hearths had been banked overnight, coals buried beneath ash. Now, in the dim pre-dawn light, servants knelt beside them, brushing away the ash to reveal the faintest orange glow beneath. Small pieces of kindling were added. A careful breath coaxed the ember to life. A spark, a flame, one hearth after another, brought slowly back to warmth. In the great chamber, the Lord's bed curtains were drawn back, letting in the cold morning air. Servants laid out clothing, simple garments for indoor wear, heavier layers for outside, all carefully arranged. Down in the kitchen, the day's first preparations were underway. The kitchen was one of the warmest places in the castle, with a great fireplace spanning nearly an entire wall. Bread was prepared early, the dough shaped and placed into stone ovens that heated slowly, warming the room with their steady glow. Porridge simmered in large pots. Ale was brought from barrels. Cold meats from storage rooms were arranged on wooden platters. The Lord would begin his day soon, first with quiet prayers in the chapel, then with a simple breakfast, then with the routine tasks of castle management. Nothing happened quickly, nothing suddenly. Everything followed tradition, pattern, and a slow, steady rhythm. The afternoon in the castle passed much like the morning, with the same tasks, the same routines, the same slow progression of hours. Servant life in the castle. While the lord and lady moved through their predictable routines, the servants continued the steady, unending work that kept the castle running smoothly. Every morning began with cleaning. Stone floors needed sweeping, not once, but several times a day. Rushes collected dust, dropped bits of leaves, small crumbs from meals. So brooms made of bundled twigs brushed over the stone in long, slow strokes, one section at a time, again and again. The rushes themselves had to be replaced regularly. Old rushes gathered from the floor were thrown out, their edges frayed, their color faded. New rushes were brought in bundles, laid carefully, spread evenly. The work was done quietly, methodically, without hurry. Tapestries hanging on the walls needed to be shaken free of dust. Servants lifted them and let them fall, the heavy cloth swaying in slow waves before settling against the cold stone again. Water was carried constantly. The castle well was deep. Its water is cool even in summer. Servants lowered buckets into the darkness, waited for the splash below, then slowly pulled them up hand over hand along a rope worn smooth from years of use. Carrying the water through the castle took even more effort. Down hallways, up staircases, around corners, each bucket heavy, each trip repeated again and again. Throughout the day, laundry was another endless task, not done daily. But when it was done, it took hours. Clothes were soaked, scrubbed with sand or lye, rinsed, wrung out, and hung over wooden racks to dry, each piece handled carefully. Each movement is slow and deliberate. In the kitchen, preparation for meals was constant. Herbs chopped, vegetables peeled, meat boiled or roasted, bread kneaded and shaped. The large fireplace glowed steadily, heat radiating softly through the room. Servants stirred pots, checked the ovens, carried dishes to and from the great hall. The same motions, through the same hallways, day after day, and all throughout the castle. Footsteps echoed soft, steady, unhurried. Servants moving with purpose, but without a rush. Repetition was the rhythm of their lives. As the day wore on, the sun dipped lower beyond the outer walls. Shadows stretched across the courtyard. The castle shifted slowly from the business of day to the quiet routines of evening. Evening and night time in the castle. Evening in the castle came softly, the way dusk settles into the corners of old stone buildings. The light dimmed gradually, seeping away from the halls and leaving long stretches of shadow behind. Torches were lit along the walls, their flames small and flickering, casting patterns that danced gently against the stone. In the great hall, the evening meal was served. It was more elaborate than what peasants ate, but not hurried, not loud, not lively. Just steady conversation, soft clinking of wooden cups, the occasional low murmur. Servants moved quietly along the walls, refilling dishes, carrying away empty bowls, sweeping crumbs from the long tables. When the meal ended, the hall grew quiet again. The fire in the hearth was tended, logs added one at a time, sparks rising slowly, then fading into the chimney. Some castle residents drifted to their chambers, where heavy bed curtains waited to be drawn. Others remained in side rooms, mending clothes, checking ledgers, or whispering small conversations that soon tapered off into silence. Throughout the castle, evening chores continued. Fires banked for the night, doors secured. Animals in outer buildings checked to ensure they were safe and warm enough. The castle quieted. A deep, layered quiet, not empty, but settled, peaceful, still. Night watch and closing for sleep. As most of the castle slept, the night watch began. Along the outer walls, guards walked slowly, their footsteps measured and rhythmic on the stone walkway. carried torches that swayed gently with each step, casting thin ribbons of light that stretched across the walls before dissolving into darkness. Every so often, one guard paused to peer into the night, not expecting danger, not searching for anything specific, just performing the same duty that had been done night after night for years, beyond counting. Inside the castle, fires glowed faintly in their hearths, soft amber beneath layers of ash. Stone walls breathed cool air into the rooms. Bed curtains swayed slightly with the faintest current. The entire world seemed to exhale. Nothing rushed, nothing changed suddenly. Everything moved with the slow, ancient rhythm of a place that had known countless nights just like this one. And as the castle rested, so too could you. Let the weight of blankets, real or imagined, settle softly over you. Let your breathing fall into an easy pattern. Let the quiet patterns of medieval life lull your thoughts into stillness. The peasants in their thatched cottages, the servants in their quiet chambers, the lord and lady behind their drawn bed curtains, the guards pacing the walls under a pale moon, all of them living through another slow, uneventful night. Just as they rest now, you can rest too. The routines will begin again tomorrow, slow and steady, just as they always have. For now, you can sleep through history. If this peaceful walk through medieval life has helped your eyes grow heavy, you can come back anytime for more quiet stories like this. If you wish, you may subscribe so the next slow history tale is waiting for you when you need it. For now, there's nothing else to do but rest.